Well, LT, thank you so much for being here today. As student body president at A&M this year, it means a ton for you just to come to campus and interact with our students. It is incredible to learn for you, so welcome today. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to hang out with you. Thanks for taking some time to chat with me, and it's an honor to hang out with all of our listeners and watchers.
Awesome. Absolutely. Well, I guess we can hop right in. I think all of us really want to hear about your story. And when we think about, the fact that you became CEO of UScellular just a few years ago, what were some of the key defining moments in that journey that led up to your appointment to CEO?
Well, I think you have to start with being lucky is a pretty important part of any opportunity that you take or that you get put in front of you. And even just kind of where I was born and who I was born to, right? I mean, I was born to two parents that stayed together in a upper middle class neighborhood just north of Houston. I don't want to say like I started on third base and thought I hit a triple, but there's a lot of luck that goes into just where you start. And so I was very lucky from that perspective. A&M was a really formative moment for me in terms of learning how to lead. I had a bunch of leadership opportunities at A&M, so I was really active in the Corps of Cadets. I was a regiment commander my senior year. I was vice president of the student government, so I did vice president of finance, so I would have worked for you. Each of those opportunities, and I think A&M does an amazing job about this, right? They challenge you, and it challenges you in different ways. One of the things I think A&M does extremely well is it puts a lot of responsibility on students, and it trusts them to handle it, and most do, and I did. And so I think A&M was one of the first places where I really got to sort of flex leadership muscles a little bit. And by that, I mean most of leadership is not command, right? Most of leadership is influence.
Right.
Getting stuff done with others through others. And so A&M was certainly a formative point along that journey. I left A&M and joined the Marine Corps. And so I spent 5 years in the Marines, learned some fantastic leadership lessons there as well. You get a lot of responsibility thrown at you at a really early age. So I was leading, 150 people when I was 24. And I mean, not a lot of places where you get to do that, right? And so got to see the world. So I was stationed in Southeast Asia for a number of years. So that was a pretty fantastic, eye-opening experience. Went to business school, graduated from business school, and did consulting for a little while. Less about leadership there than about problem solving. So the beautiful thing about consulting is you get problem after problem thrown at you, and you start to develop the intellectual confidence that you need to solve problems. And it's not like, everything's an easy problem.
Right.
It's not. But you realize that, if I stay at something for long enough, I can crack this problem. And that's a valuable lesson that I learned at Bain Company. I left Bain and joined a startup. And so I did a startup for a couple of years, learned some fantastic lessons there. I actually got fired from my startup, which is an interesting story. When I started, it was a very, very new startup.
Okay.
Had been around less than a year. And there was a CEO, CTO, maybe 20 or so engineers. It was a business-to-business startup, so we sold to other businesses, and there were 5 salespeople, and the place was a bit of a mess. The CEO's wife was the head of HR.
Wow.
His brother-in-law was the head of channels. His best friend was the head of sales. I mentioned we had 5 salespeople. Right. 3 had not sold anything in the first 8 months that the company had been around, but they were friends of the CEO. 2, it was a husband-wife team, totally were carrying the company. And so I'd been there for a couple weeks, and I just blew the place up. So I was COO, and I was brought on to kind of operate the company. And the deal that I had was I had a revenue target I had to get to, and I had to get to cash flow positive. And when I did, we had a bunch of shares that would vest. And so again, I'd been there a couple weeks, place was a mess, I just blew it up. New org chart, new strategy, new metrics, fired 3 salespeople that weren't performing, totally reshuffled the org chart, hired some new people, and off we went. And ran the business for about 2.5 years, and we hit the target, right? Hit the revenue target, got to cash flow positive. We had a big party to celebrate. And the CEO and the chairman called me in, and they said, congratulations, and now you're fired.
Really?
Fired me on the spot. And the reason, right, upon reflection and some gin and tonics, the reason was I was a jerk, right? Everybody hated me. It was the right strategy. It was the right tactics. It was totally the wrong approach, right? I brought no one along for the ride. It was me. My strategy, my org chart, my KPIs, everybody else just get in line. And people didn't like it, and I don't blame them, right? I mean, that's not a fun environment to work. And so I learned the hard way about how important mission is, right? Inspire people, make them feel like they're part of something big and important. Get buy-in, right? Don't have it be my plan, not me, right? Have it be our plan, right? Co-create together. And I was lucky, back to that theme of luck, right? I was lucky that I got to learn that lesson when I was in my early 30s. Most people don't learn that lesson until they're much later in their career, and it's much more difficult to recover, right?
Right.
So fired from the startup, joined AT&T, and I've been a telco guy. I mentioned when I was in the Marine Corps, I was a communications officer, so I love the telco industry. And I spent about 12 years at AT&T, moved all over the place. So I have now 15-year-old daughters, and they're at house number 8. So we kind of put in our dues in terms of moving around and having a bunch of different experiences, which I think was another formative aspect of learning to lead, right? I mean, you have to get multiple reps, right? You don't step into a job or step into an opportunity and you know how to lead, right? It takes practice, it takes experience. And so AT&T was fantastic in that they gave me a number of these opportunities to learn how to lead. My last job with AT&T, I was CEO of AT&T Mexico, so based in Mexico City. Spent a couple years down there, it was amazing. And then back to the theme of luck, right? I decided to I thought it was time to sort of move on and do something new, and this opportunity at UScellular came around. There's not a lot of CEO jobs in telecom, right? Most of these are really big companies, and so had the opportunity to join UScellular about 2.5 years ago. It's a fantastic company, a really strong mission. Right? Our mission is to connect people to what matters most to them. I love that. I wake up every morning, I'm proud of what we do. I think our employees are proud of what we do. We focus mostly on rural areas. And so bridging the digital divide, connecting people that without us wouldn't be connected is important to us. And so it's been a fantastic ride.
That is an incredible story. Thank you for the leadership advice as well. I know that's helpful for me and all of our students. But there's just so much there in your story. So I'm curious, when you were a kid, we get asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you've been like 7, 8 things when you grew up. So how did you answer that question?
I want to be in telecom middle management, right? I mean, that's kind of what I've always aspired for. No, I'm joking. Oh man, I was all over the map.
Okay.
I mean, I think when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. Then when I had a little bit more, when I realized that I was going to have to wear glasses, and that was kind of out the window, I thought being a lawyer would be cool. I spent a tiny bit of time at a friend of my parents' law firm, and just didn't think I would be very good at it.
Okay.
Even when I got to A&M, I mean, I changed my major 3 times, right? I started as an economics major, then I was poli-sci, and then I ended up in the business school as a marketing and business management major. Thought I was going to be a Marine, right? I mean, and so, although when I got in the Marines, I fully expected I was only going to do 1 tour and get out. But I'm not one of those people that knew exactly what I wanted to do kind of my whole career.
Got it.
I admire folks like that. I think they're in the minority. I think most of us don't really know what we want to do, and you kind of figure it out as you go. There was a formative moment for me when I was in the Marines. When you start in the Marines, it's very unique in terms of the other armed services. With the other armed services, Army, Air Force, Navy, Space Force. Still feels strange.
I forget. I always forget that's a branch.
I have to remember to say that. Coast Guard. When you enter those services, you know what you're going to do when you join, right? So you both know, okay, I'm going to join the Navy, and I'm going to be a submariner, right? Or I'm going to be a surface warfare officer, or I'm going to do whatever. The Marines are unique in that all you know is that you're going to be a Marine. And everyone trains to be a basic infantry officer. And then at the end of a school called the basic school, first 6 months of your time is spent at the school. At the end of that, you get your specialty. And there's a convoluted process that I won't go into, but I got my specialty, my first choice, which was communications. But at the time, I only chose it for 2 reasons. One, because it was still a frontline officer position, which meant I got to crawl around in the mud and blow stuff up. And 2, it felt like a trade that I could use afterwards, right? I knew I was only going to do a couple years, and then I wanted to do something else, but I didn't know what it was. And so first day at comm school, they put you in the back of it's called a 5-ton, these huge military trucks. Sometimes you'll see them riding down the highway. They put you in the back of a 5-ton. They drive you out in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness in Virginia, and they drop you off in kind of 2-mile intervals. So you're just by yourself in the woods. And they give you a battery, a spool of wire, a handset, right? And all the handset does is it takes your voice and turns it into magnetic signals, and a book. And the book is entitled The Fundamentals of Wave Theory. And they say, okay, there's going to be this unit at Fort A.P. Hill, which is about 100 miles away, and they're monitoring a specific frequency. And you have to figure out how to communicate with them. And when you do, they have an alphanumeric code that they'll give you. You bring us that alphanumeric code, and we give you food, right? So, okay, I'm in the middle of nowhere, open up the manual, start reading, right? Well, what's a frequency, right? Well, the frequency corresponds to a wavelength, right? So you create a wave of a certain length, and depending on the length and size of that wave, that corresponds to a frequency, right? So if you're listening to FM radio and you listen to 97.5, it's a slightly different frequency than 105.3, right? So how do I create the wavelength that I need to broadcast to this unit kind of reading? And okay, I have to cut the wire to a certain length because the length of the wire, the wave that will build up on that wire, is the right length to be broadcasting in that frequency. Okay, cool, cut the wire. Your phone has an antenna that broadcasts and receives in all directions, right? This is just a wire, so it sends out and receives in one direction. So, okay, where's Fort A.P. Hill? Okay, it's that way. Orient the map, string up the wire, connect it to the battery, and I'm thinking, I'm going to be hungry tonight. And first time, clear as a bell.
Really?
And I'll never forget my alphanumeric code, Roger 4 Whiskey.
Wow.
And I thought it was the coolest thing that I could do that, right? That I wasn't an engineer, right? That I could communicate with someone over a distance like that using really, really basic stuff.
Right.
And I was hooked, right? And so I still think it is the coolest thing, right? So everything that we do on our phones, for example, right? It's combinations of zeros and ones, which are just the top and the bottom of those wavelengths that we broadcast on. And it's just permutations and evolutions of that thing that I did in the woods in the Marine Corps. And so that was the first moment that I sort of knew, okay, I want to be doing this, right? I want to be doing communications for my career. The other thing, though, I didn't know what or how, right? And so went to business school after the Marines because, okay, I don't really know what's out there. I don't know how to get into the business of communications. And even consulting afterwards, right? It was, how do I create option value for myself? How do I open doors with the decisions that I make in my career rather than close them. And so, I mean, as far as advice goes, if you know what you want to do, right? If you know exactly what it is that you want to go do with your career and with your life, you should go do it, right? If you were born to be an artist, or you were born to be a guitar player, or you were born to be a hedge fund mogul, awesome, go do that, right? Most of us don't know exactly what we want. Do you know exactly what you want to do?
I do not.
Neither did I, right? And so as you make choices in terms of whether it's the college you attend or the major you decide to pursue or the job you pursue after college, if you don't know exactly what it is that you want to do, try to make decisions and make choices that create optionality, that open doors.
Right.
And so for me, business school opened doors. Consulting opened doors. And that helped, create this opportunity to sort of figure out what I wanted to be over time.
That's so helpful for me and for us as students to hear, because we have our major, we have ideas, but like you said, we have no idea what we want to do 20 years down the road. So yeah, do things that open doors. I love that.
Well, and some people may have kind of the vague idea of, okay, well, maybe I want to be a CEO. Right. But I mean, becoming a CEO is a combination of, on one hand, a whole bunch of specific steps and specific experiences that you generally need to accumulate over time. And it's also a whole heck of a lot of luck. Like the right opportunity opening up at the right time. And so if instead, right, you have the perspective of, I want to collect a set of experiences along the way, right? And if that helps me be a leader of a company or a leader of an institution or a leader of a foundation or a leader of a nonprofit, awesome, right? But the important thing is collecting the experiences.
Right. And then you can apply that experience to whatever doors open up.
You got it. I mean, the experience you're getting right now as student body president, right? Think about how many doors that will open up for you in terms of, hey, if you want to go be a leader in any individual endeavor, right? You have something under your belt that you can call upon that's going to be germane, it's going to be relevant. Collecting those experiences, irrespective of if it's exactly what you're going to do in the future, create experiences, create optionality.
That's some great advice. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I think one of the things you're known for is being a great leader, an inspirational leader. So would love to just hear, how do you define leadership?
The definition of leadership that I learned in the Marines, I think, is using influence to drive others towards a common goal. I'll talk a little bit more broadly, though, because I think the definition of leadership is a little bit less interesting than kind of how you apply it. I get asked a lot, like, what is your leadership style?
Right.
And I actually think that that's kind of I think you have to have a lot of hubris to assume that your style, right, is going to work in all situations. I think instead what I try to do is say, okay, how do I adjust my style and how do I adjust my approach to whatever the team that I'm part of needs? And so sometimes the team that you're in is in a really stressful situation. The numbers aren't, I'll use business examples. The numbers aren't great. Closing the quarter, right? We don't have the sales that we need, right? Maybe we don't have the profitability that we need. The last thing that a team needs in that situation is a leader that is going to take what is already a stressful situation and create more stress, right? What that team needs is a leader that's going to say, hey guys, like, it's going to be okay, right? We have a great team, right? We have a great company, we have the right mission, we're going to sort this out, right? A calming influence.
Right.
Sometimes things are great. Right? Numbers are rolling, teams clicking, performance is great, and what can happen then is people can get complacent. And then what you need is a leader that's going to crack the whip a little bit, that's going to drop the fist in the sense that, okay guys, hey, let's not get complacent, right? We still have opportunities here, here, and here. And if you acknowledge that, and if you say as a leader, I am going to adjust my approach, my style, my objectives based on what the team needs, you start to get towards this concept of servant leadership. And I had the opportunity to do a panel actually yesterday with Larry O'Donnell, former CEO of Waste Management. And he talks a lot about the inverting the pyramid of leadership. So there's this kind of traditional sense of, there's a pyramid and the leader sits at the top of the pyramid and kind of commands and controls everything that is beneath.
Right.
Servant leadership flips that on its end, right? So you say the leader's job is actually to support and to serve your team and to determine what they need in order to accomplish a mission. And that mission is greater than you and greater than your team. For my company right now, our mission's pretty easy: connect people to what matters most. And so what I try to do from a leadership perspective is help my team and be there in whatever way they need me to be in order to accomplish that mission.
That's great. And so when you're talking about your team, I've heard that one of the defining traits of a leader is how do you equip the next generation of leaders or the next people that are going to take that role. So how do you kind of think about that with your team? How do you equip your team to be leaders as well?
So I'm a really big believer in something that that I learned in the Marines called commander's intent, the concept of commander's intent. There's a great book called Call Sign Chaos. It's probably one of the best leadership books I've ever read. It's by Jim Mattis, the former Secretary of Defense, former Marine. And he has a whole chapter dedicated to this concept of commander's intent. And the idea is that the role of a leader is to establish a clear mission, right? A really clear mission statement, and be very clear with what you want your team to accomplish. Then make sure that your team has the capabilities, whether it's you've hired the right people or you've trained them, right? And then allow them to accomplish that objective in whatever way they think is best.
Okay.
Don't micromanage, right? Your job is to set a clear objective, hire and train the best people, and then get obstacles out of their way. And the beauty of that is that if you pursue that approach to leadership, you're training people simply by experience the entire time, right? So for example, let's say you and I are working together. I'll use a military analogy because that's what was in the book. If we're on one hill and we look across and there's another hill and the enemy's on the other hill, right? And I say, hey, I want you to go down the hill, across the valley, up the hill, and go take care of the enemy. And you say, okay, got it. You start down the hill and you start across the valley and the enemy leaves the hill. Well, now what do you do, right? Did he want me to take the hill or did he want me to go take care of the enemy? There's confusion.
Right.
You have to stop. You have to radio back to me. Hey, LT, what was it that you wanted me to do, right? What do you want me to do here? We lose time, right? A lot of times kind of difficult to communicate because it's not always that clear. And you don't feel empowered. Right? You have to call back. Right. Hey, what was it that you wanted me to do? Right? And your team sees that, and so now you're not empowered. You don't feel like you have control of the situation. I have not helped you grow and develop. However, if I set a really clear goal, then I say, go figure it out. Right? I trust you. Right? You have everything that you need to go be successful. And you know what? If you make mistakes along the way, that's fine. It's not a big deal. In fact, I'm going to take responsibility for the mistakes you make. But when you are successful, I'm going to celebrate you, right? Success is yours, failures are mine. If you set that model up, people will learn, they will thrive, and they will be ready to take on larger and larger opportunities because they've lived it, right? And they've observed you having that servant leader, that commander's intent mentality, and they will generally mimic it over time as well. And so to me, kind of experience like that is the best way to train people. I do it now. When I first took this job, I was probably making, 7 or 8 decisions a day, right? And people have this this stereotypical vision of a CEO, right? And it's just barking out orders, right? Ah, go do this, go do that, create profit, grow revenue, serve the customer. And I'll never forget one of the first decisions that got, not one of the first ones, but after the first couple of months, and I use this example all the time internally. It was about October. I took the job in July of 2020, middle of the pandemic, by the way.
Wow.
And in October, somebody emailed me 3 copies of 3 different options for our holiday card. And they said, we need you to decide what our holiday card is going to be. And I was like, why am I doing this?
Right.
They were like, well, the CEO has always picked the holiday card. I'm like, well, let this be my first empowerment.
You're gonna
I
delegate
trust
that.
you
Yeah.
to choose the holiday card, right? But now, over time, right, my team understands that I trust them, right, to make good decisions. We all have a clear understanding of the mission that we're trying to accomplish. They don't feel the need to come ask permission, right, unless they want it. Right? I mean, if they want guidance, if they want help, I'm always there. Because of that, I've moved from making 8 decisions a day to maybe 8 decisions a quarter.
Wow.
Which is great because now I get to spend my time on the things that I'm truly good at and maybe I'm best at doing, which usually is not what my COO or my CMO or my CFO are doing.
Right.
They are better and they are better equipped to make those decisions than I am. So hopefully that gives you a sense.
That does. It seems like that strategy not only equips those people to be the next great leaders, but also is the most efficient way to run a company, and has really, really worked for you.
Well,
so.
it also, it gives me time.
Right. Time.
Right?
Time is huge.
It is. And so it gives me time to either spend on what I think are like the things only I can do.
Right.
And I don't mean because of me personally and my personal capabilities. I mean, there's some things that only a CEO can do. We're in the middle right now of a big effort working with the government. The government has issued a huge infrastructure funding bill to help pay for broadband throughout the country. Each state is going to get to decide how they want to spend the dollars that are there being allocated. And we have a technology called fixed wireless, which takes wireless signals and essentially provides a broadband link to the home, right? So not just to your phone, but it can replace DSL or satellite. It's not a good replacement for fiber, but it's a great solution to connect homes and businesses in rural America. I have to go pitch that, right? And the governors of each state are making decisions of how to spend this money. I am the only person that can go and speak to a governor. Not because LT knows more, but because a governor is only going to want to speak to a CEO.
Absolutely.
So now, if I trust my COO and my CFO to make the decisions in terms of operating the company efficiently, I create time for me to be able to go talk to a governor about a funding bill.
Got it.
If I'm in the weeds, right, trying to run the company for them, well, then I don't have the time to go do what only I can do.
That's good. That's great. Well, I could ask you about leadership all day and learn a ton, but I know we want to hear a little bit about your A&M experience as well. So curious about, you talked about the core and some of your involvements, and obviously tradition and involvement are huge for us at A&M. So would love to hear just more about your time at A&M and what all you did here.
So I spent 5 years here. I did a victory lap.
Okay.
I was here 92 to 97. I was in the core. I was in company E2. I loved my time in the core. I made some fantastic friends. Had the opportunity to lead the Navy Marine Regiment while I was here, which was just a fantastic experience, and a really good opportunity to learn leadership through influence. In the core, one of the things I love is that the company, right, that smaller group is really kind of the nucleus of culture in the core. And if you're going to get things done as a regiment commander, right, you have, in my case, I think it was something like 12 or 14 companies. I can't just go tell the company commanders, hey, go do this, right? It's got to be via influence, right? Hey, we're trying to get this accomplished, right? And so I think that was one of the first places I learned that. Student government was a fantastic opportunity to flex similar kinds of muscles. So I got to run the Student Service Fee Allocation Committee. Not even sure if that's still around.
I think it is.
All right, cool.
We may call it something a little different, but.
So every organization on campus gets, at the time, got certain budget from this student service fee. And there was a process to allocate that student service fee to the different organizations. And I, as a student, got to run that process. Now I got plenty of guidance and help, but what an amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
And there aren't a whole lot of universities in this country that would trust that process to a student.
Right.
I got to work with some incredible student body presidents, Carl Baggett, Brooke Leslie, who trusted me and who gave me kind of opportunity to help them accomplish what they wanted to go do, in my case, from a financial perspective. And so really had the opportunity to kind of exercise leadership in a pretty meaningful way really early on. And it was thanks to A&M, and it was thanks to student associations at A&M. I was also a bartender at the Dry Bean, which taught me a bunch of other interesting skills.
I bet.
Yeah, some of which I can make a mean Negroni, and I learned that at the Dry Bean. And maybe that may be the most useful thing I learned.
Got it. And so I'm curious, coming back to campus, interacting with students, what are some things that have changed about the student body and about A&M, and what are some things that have not changed at all and that are the same?
I mean, the things that have stayed the same are what you would expect, and I think it's what makes A&M so special. You spirit, the kind of just sort of togetherness and esprit de corps that you feel on campus. I went and spoke. I got the chance to speak with a couple core leaders for yesterday, and I was walking around campus, and the first thing I hear is howdy. When I walk on campus.
That's awesome.
It's awesome. It was fantastic. And so I think just the students' pride and just the general spirit around the university, it isn't even the same. It's probably grown since I've been here.
Wow.
And so I think that's just something fantastic to see. Something that I think is different is just the size of the student body. Right?
74,000 now,
it's
I think.
Enormous. And I think on one hand, I think it's fantastic. It creates, I think, greater and greater opportunities for students. It creates access to resources that I didn't have, and so I think that's a fantastic asset. Worried is the wrong word. I'm interested to see at what point a university becomes too big.
Right.
Does the value of the degree start to get diluted? I don't think we're there yet, but I think it's something that I pay attention to as an alum, and I kind of keep a close eye on. But that's something certainly that's different. The other thing that I think is different is the motivations of students that I speak with. When I was graduating, the job you were going to have and what you were going to make at that job was kind of the defining factor. And it's not that everyone was driven by money, right? But it was, okay, what are you going to do when you graduate? And like what that job paid was a pretty defining factor. And in students that I speak with now, I sense a much broader set of factors that they consider about what they want to do. So it's, yes, I mean, you have to make a decent living. But it's also, does the mission of this company, does whatever this company does, and it's not just a company, right? It can be an institution, the Marines, a university, a nonprofit, right? But does the mission of this institution that I'm going to go join, is it meaningful? Does it align with my values? Flexibility is big, right? I think students I talk to now realize that a very, very small number of them are going to spend a long time at whatever institution they join. And so the flexibility and the training they receive and the development they receive and what the working style is going to be like. We didn't think about any of those things, right? And so I think that the introduction of those factors, and I think students having a much broader perspective on what is it that they want to go do and how can they contribute meaningfully to society, I think it's an incredibly positive development, and it's certainly meaningfully different from when I was here.
That's a really interesting point, because Maze really does a great job of training us. Of course, go look for a great job where you can make a great living, but look for a place where you can thrive and where your culture and values align. And they harp on that a lot, so that makes sense that you're seeing that. And I'm curious, so when you talk about the Aggie spirit, the Aggie way, the Aggie culture, is that something that you feel like you can replicate inside of your company or in companies you've been with? Or is that kind of unique to A&M? Is it hard to replicate that elsewhere?
That's a really good question. Replicate, no. One, it's quite unique, right? If I said, okay, UScellular, tomorrow we are going to start saying howdy to each other, right? I mean, I think people would freak out. So replicate, no. The Aggie spirit, the Aggie culture has hundreds of years underpinning it. You can't just create something like that out of thin air. The concept, though, right, of being part of something that is bigger than yourself, and finding consistent ways to remind and reinforce that concept with people, that can be replicated.
Okay.
And so I'm actually extremely proud of the culture that we have at UScellular. It was there before I got there. So there's a very powerful culture. We call it the dynamic organization. It has a set of cultural beliefs that underpin it. And then an entire laser focus on serving our customers with excellence. And people believe it, right? We train it to them on day one. There are constant reminders of the importance of the DO. We call it the DO, the dynamic organization. It's even used as like a phrase of judgment. Like if someone does something that's not really good, you go, ooh, that's not DO.
Really?
So there's similar concepts
Okay.
with the Aggie spirit, right? And yes, I do think that the fundamentals of the Aggie spirit, which is, hey, we are part of something bigger than ourselves, and then we have all of these traditions that reinforce that concept. Muster, silver taps, big event, right? All these different things that reinforce we are here for more than just us. I do think that can be replicated, and we're trying to do it at UScellular as well.
Got it. Awesome. And so I love this question. You're talking about your time at A&M. So if you're looking back, giving your freshman self advice today, what would you tell that freshman self?
I think that the advice I would give myself, and I don't know if I would take it, right?
Right.
So it at the time, I think I would have been like, yeah, okay, old ag, thanks.
Right.
By the way, I don't know when you become an old ag, but it is jarring the first time when you walk on campus and someone comes up to you and says something like, this was about 10 years ago, it happened to me. Someone says, hey, it's really nice to see old ag come back to campus. And I'm like, you shut your mouth. I'm not an old ag yet, right? But I've accepted it now. I would talk about happiness. And the advice I would give is the sooner you can start thinking of your happiness not in comparing yourself to other people, the better off you will be. It's a Roosevelt quote, right? Comparison is the thief of joy. And there's a fascinating experiment. It's a psychological experiment. And I actually did this to my daughters. I have two 15-year-old twin girls, and I did this when they were like 7 or 8. I had them come in. I'd read about this experiment. I wanted to try it. I didn't come up with this.
Right.
I had 10 $1 bills on the coffee table, and I had the two of them come in, and I told Gabby. I said, so Gabby and Allie. I said, hey Gabby, there's 10 $1 bills here. They're for you. If you want, you can give some to your sister, but you don't have to. And Gabby's actually a pretty nice human being, and so she gave her sister $4. And I went to Allie, and I go, are you happy? And what do you think she said?
She probably said yes.
No.
She said no?
She got 4. How many did her sister get?
She got 6.
6,
okay.
Right? And so, no, I'm not happy.
Okay.
Well, why not? Well, because it should have been, it's not fair.
Right.
Why did she get, $6 and I only get 4?
Right.
Totally human nature. I turned to Allie and I'm like, but hang on a minute. You just walked in the room. You've done nothing, right? And you're $4 richer.
Right.
You should be happy, right? But she's not happy. Why?
Because her sister got 6.
It's not fair,
Yeah.
right? You define happiness not by what you have or where you're at, but you define happiness compared to others.
Okay, that's
It's human nature to
Yeah.
do. So I'd gotten out of Harvard Business School, and I say that only because I mentioned the Harvard part, only because I have colleagues from business school that have done exceptionally well in their careers. I was working at Bain Company. Bain's a strategy consulting firm, pays very, very well. I was doing great. I was unhappy because I was comparing myself to this small sliver of people in my business school that had gone, and I have 2 of my friends who have founded private equity firms. I have a couple people who are doing better, and I was comparing myself to them. That's what you do. That's human nature, right? You look up and you compare up, right? You don't compare laterally, you don't compare down, and remember, compare.
Right.
At that point, I actually had the realization, it was, what the heck am I doing, right? This is ridiculous. I'm blessed beyond compare, right? I have a wife that is amazing and that I love like none other. I have 2 beautiful kids, right? I make a good living. My parents are still living. Like, I mean, I could tick down all the things that I'm so lucky and so blessed about. Yet I'm spending my time, right, looking up at a small sliver of people who make more money than I.
Right.
How dumb is that? But it's human nature.
It is.
And so what I've been able, I think, over time and with exercise to do is to define happiness and to seek joy much more internally via things that I control, via things that I can appreciate. I think about how much time and effort and energy I spent comparing myself to others, as opposed to finding joy at what I was doing and the situation that I was in.
Right.
That's probably the advice I would give.
That's so good because it's so not what our culture does right now.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
That's awesome. Well, I feel like we've had an incredible conversation. I want to just make sure you have the opportunity, though. Is there anything else that you would want to talk about that I didn't ask about today?
Oh, gosh. We covered a lot of ground.
We did.
I don't think so. I mean, I'll say thank you for the opportunity. Thanks for facilitating this. You're
Absolutely.
a great moderator. And, thanks to the business school and thanks to A&M for giving us this opportunity. As a old ag, it's an honor to come back and not just to share wisdom. We get so much out of this experience, working with students, learning from you guys, seeing your energy, your enthusiasm, and so it's a real honor to be part of it. So thank you, and thanks to the business school.
Absolutely. Thank you, LT, so much for being here. I mean, I learned a ton. I can't wait for all the listeners to learn a ton as well. It means a ton that you just come back and spend your time on campus with us. So thank you for all you do for A&M and for us out in the world, too.
It's my pleasure. Gig 'em, guys.
Gig 'em.